So it was 1972. That's when you and I took our grand trip. We left Louisville to go out west. As I recall, we got as far as Warrior, Alabama, 342 miles down the road. That's where our 1966 VW Beetle died. I had the manual for Volkswagen maintenance for the complete idiot.
Yes.
Which everybody who had a Volkswagen back in the day had that. And it described the sounds that an engine would make if you threw a piston rod.
Yes.
And that was the sound
And
it was making.
This guy was describing it to a T. And so we knew at that time we had some serious problems. We had a plan. And this plan...
Whose plan was it?
It's a good question.
Did we really have a plan? Because I'm not so sure.
I think we had a plan.
I think if we had a plan, we would have had a different vehicle than a 1966 Volkswagen Beetle for the two of us, all of our gear, and we were gonna go as far west as we could get. The Beetle died. We ended up selling it to a guy named Slick. My brother came and rescued us in Warrior, Alabama, and we ended up camping on the beach down in Florida. And as I recalled, you stayed and hung in there for about 5 days and then headed home, and I spent the rest of my summer in Pensacola, Florida.
And the grand trip had come to an end.
Yes. Here I am 45 years later, and I'm going to try it again. And this time it's in a VW bus, something a little bit bigger. It's a 1973. This is Zorba. I found it down in Virginia. I flew down to Virginia to check it out. Probably one of the more daring things I've done in relation to this trip was just bought it on the spot. I fell in love with it. It seemed perfect for what I wanted, and decided I'm driving it back home to Massachusetts. So I retired last year. My career was in social work. I spent most of my time working with kids. The last 30 years I spent with Boys and Girls Clubs of Boston. I found this great guy, Damon, at German Auto Sports. Loves working on these air-cooled VWs. So we've done a number of things. Damon's put some new carburetors in there. He worked on the brake system. I was pretty much standing on the brakes the whole way home from Virginia. Put a new muffler on it, put electronic ignition on it. VW buses do have a reputation for breaking down. You hear a lot of stories about them leaving people stranded in the middle of nowhere, or they're not able to get over the Rockies. And you know, I expect the unexpected. As much as I look forward to this adventure, I know there are going to be those days where I'm going to wonder why I even tried it. Some people, including my wife Diane, think I'm a little crazy for doing this. On the other hand, she's been really supportive and looks forward to celebrating with me when I get to California. The anticipated route is across the United States via the middle states. I will avoid interstates as much as possible. I'm taking my bike and my hiking boots, and both will get a consistent workout. Where I park the bus each night is very much unknown. I do not plan on using campgrounds unless I am desperate for an electrical hookup. I'm counting on my solar panel to help me with that. Of course, the bus itself will have lots to say as to how well this plan is implemented. I recently learned about the Air-Cooled Rescue Squad, which has representatives in every state. I have them on speed dial. While the route itself is sort of 90% planned, sort of what I'm seeing and doing along the way is still very much up for grabs. It's a relatively small vehicle, but you can really put everything you need in a VW bus. It's got a very comfortable bed. It's got a sink with running water. It's got a small refrigerator. It's got a place where I can use my camp stove. It's even got a toilet. And it's even got a microwave. So it's a really very tight environment, but I think it's got everything I'm going to need on this trip. The first day was not without its challenges. I knew there would be days like this. I just didn't expect it on day one. There were two moments where I thought about turning back. First, about 15 miles in, I heard a high-pitched whining sound coming from the bus. As I looked for a place to pull over, it went away, and then came back even louder. I pulled over and could not determine where it was coming from. As suddenly as it appeared, it then completely disappeared. It did not return for the entire trip. First day jitters. The second time I considered aborting the trip was when I stopped at a rest area on the Mass Pike after sitting in traffic for an hour. It was hot, crowded, and the line was 20 deep to buy the engine oil I needed. The bus suddenly looked very small and cramped. I looked around and thought, God, this is my life now. But then I reminded myself, it was the Mass Pike in the summer, and the rest of America has to be less insane. Keeping my fingers crossed on that one. It was 48 years too late, but I finally got to Woodstock. I'm in Bethel, New York, site of the 1969 Woodstock Music Festival. Hector's Inn was a place for people to gather during the original festival, and it continues to be a way station for travelers and a gathering place for people deeply into the hippie culture. It's hard to describe Hector's. For now, let's just say that apparently some people came in 1969 and never left. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Well, actually, there might be. Ever since he found the vein, Jack could never be the same. Say Jackson. All right. Having a little trouble with Zorba. It's being stubborn about getting into first and second gear. So, heading into Bethlehem, PA. Gonna see a guy named Dave at Kresge Foreign Auto. Supposed to be good at working on these air-cooled engines, so we'll let Dave take a look at it and see what happens. All right, well, we knew there'd be days like this.
Shift coupler up here. See that little bit of motion there without the smallest amount of play in there. And this block is degraded and been replaced with some material that doesn't belong in there.
Okay.
Overall, it's a pretty solid bus body-wise. I don't see any major rot or any problems that way. Few oil leaks on the engine. The heads look like they're getting a little loose maybe. Soon time for an overhaul. But overall, relatively solid bus.
All right, Dave, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bus is running great. So what's the prognosis? Will it get to California?
I think you'll make it.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
Will I make it back?
Maybe you should sell it in California.
Awesome. Traveling down Wicko Hollow Road, the hills of Virginia, West Virginia. So after I got rolling again, I headed from Pennsylvania down into West Virginia, coal country. I thought West Virginia would be a good test for the bus because the terrain is so hilly. I was on the interstate for part of the time, but then really got back into the hills and the hollers, and it was a real challenge for the bus to get up some of these hills. I had to get down into second gear, but at the same time I never felt like it wasn't going to get to the top, and it just kept running very true, and it got me over every hill, every challenge I threw at it, and we got through West Virginia. By the time I got to my hometown of Louisville, Kentucky, I had been on the road for 10 days and very much in need of a break. I stayed at my sister Jeanette's house for a few days, and while I recharged my batteries, Zorba got an oil change and his sliding door fixed. Heading out of Louisville, heading west through Indiana. Back on the road after a couple of days of rest and relaxation. So, had to get moving. I was getting soft. So, back to living in the bus, on the road. We'll be spending the night here in Indiana, probably around Washington, Indiana. So, not sure where we're putting the bus tonight, but we'll find a spot. And feels good to be back on the road. Feels good to be heading almost directly west. So every mile gets me a little closer to California and a little closer to seeing Diane. All right. Peace out. After leaving Louisville, I felt like Zorba and I had finally broken away from the congestion of the East Coast. The landscape was wide open, very little traffic, and there were considerable distances between the towns. The back roads of Indiana and Illinois have a completely different feel to them than the back roads of Pennsylvania and West Virginia. The miles flew by much more quickly, and I think it helped that we were moving directly west, with each mile taking me closer to my objective. I want to take what each day brings me. I don't think there's that one big thing that I hope to walk away from this trip, other than just having the experience and being open to whatever happens along the way. This is a classic VW Jack from back in the day. Zorba had a bit of a hiccup yesterday as he got a flat tire in Graham Cave State Park. I put the spare tire on, then went to Scheidegger's Service Center in Herman. There, my new best friend, Doug Scheidegger, replaced the inner tube. That's right, the tire had an inner tube. No school like old school. My collection of mechanics between Boston and California continues to grow. Thanks for your help today, Doug. One of the places I wanted to visit was Tipton, Missouri. My great-great-great-grandfather, Hubertus Steimel, immigrated to the United States and settled in Tipton, where he had a farm. In fact, I learned that there was a Steimel Road in Tipton, Missouri, and I was looking forward to see what this road was like. What I found was a one-lane dirt road out in the country. It's probably where his farm was. And instead of leading us to some great Ponderosa ranch that had been in the family for many years, it was essentially a dead end. It's wide open prairie for as far as the eye can see. Our family vacations while growing up in Kentucky were always in Kansas, visiting our relatives there. My fondest memories were days in Council Grove, where my uncle was pastor of St. Rose of Lima Catholic Church. My Aunt Dorothy Ann had a boat, and we spent most of our days water skiing on the lake just outside of town. I stopped by the lake as I passed through Council Grove, and of course went to the spot by the dam where we used to troll for catfish. One of the keys to living in a space this small is organization, which has frankly never been my strong suit. It's really like living in a Rubik's Cube, where you have to move 2 or 3 things in order to get to the thing that you want. And then you have to put the Rubik's pieces back together so that it's there in the future when you want to find it. When I started on this trip, I had very mixed feelings about doing a blog. There was a part of me that thought being off the grid could be a good thing. Certainly getting away from some of the political news in this country appealed to me. But there were people that I knew certainly wanted to share in this journey, had asked me to consider doing a blog. And I think in the end, I felt like I probably needed the company along the way. That being off the grid translated into not having as much contact with both my friends and the world than I would be able to handle. So I started blogging. Morning, sweetie.
Good morning, how are you?
Oh, I'm good. It's a beautiful sunrise here. It's actually a nice spot.
Wow.
So, it'll be a sunny day. I'll get a lot of stuff charged up with my solar panel. So one of the challenges of this trip was being away from home, my comfortable house, and my loving wife, Diane. But in many ways, I really felt she was with me the whole way. Certainly through occasional phone calls and text messages, but I think by my filming and participating and supporting her documentary project, I felt like we were working on something together. And so I was supporting her documentary, and she was supporting my blog and giving me encouragement in that area. Okay. All right, babe.
That would be great.
All right. Sound like you're in bed. That's good. Go back to sleep.
Lindsay and my brother left.
Oh, they did. Oh, they did leave
So
early.
it was a nice visit.
Oh, good.
Now it's nice and quiet.
All right. Go back to sleep. I'll talk to you later. I got my direction.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye. And now I'm in the lowlands of Colorado. I've got the Rockies up ahead of me, so that's going to be quite a challenge. We'll see how Zorba does. That will be the big test. You get a lot of advice online regarding how to get a VW bus over the Rockies. There are a lot of different suggestions in terms of routes. In the end, I decided to take I-70 because it's 4 lanes, people can get around you when you're getting slow, and if you do get in trouble, you're more apt to get help quickly. One of the suggestions online was actually to get behind a large truck and draft behind them, but the trucks were going by me so fast that wasn't possible. And then as Zorba and I were getting near the top, we were passed by a VW bus on a trailer. And Zorba and I both came to the same conclusion. That's the best way for a VW bus to get over the Rockies. Why didn't anybody suggest that online? Zorba and I got a great start on climbing the Rockies this morning, and we're making real progress when we stopped for gas. It was then I realized my emergency brakes no longer functioned, and my front brakes were acting up as well. I located an automotive shop a little further up the road and pulled in about an hour before they opened. Unlike most of the people on this trip, the mechanic did not seem particularly happy to see an old VW bus. I explained the problem, and he said he would try to get to it. Later in the day, I stopped by the shop, and he explained that he had not gotten to it and wasn't sure when he would get to it tomorrow. I put Plan B into action. Hey, Damon. It was to call my mechanic back in Boston. We concluded it was probably safe to go. All right, perfect. Thank you so much. All right, have a good one. Bye-bye. I believe his comment was, a lot of old hippies drive around with no emergency brakes. The other brake issue seems manageable, and besides, you aren't really supposed to use your brakes when descending a mountain. So we should be all set, right? We climbed 12 miles to the Eisenhower Tunnel, an engineering marvel at an elevation of 11,000 feet, which took us through the middle of a mountain. The tunnel is the longest mountain tunnel, 1.7 miles, and highest point on the interstate highway system. Interstate 70 then dips down but rises again to go over Vail Pass at an elevation of 10,600 feet. All right, we're now starting our second big climb. This should take us up over Vail Pass. And after that, the best I can figure out, we'll be heading down out of the Rockies. So that will be behind us. So hang in there, Zorba. After that, it was downhill all the way, literally. And I kept my eye out for the runaway truck ramps that would appear every few miles. While there were a few white-knuckle moments with semis knocking us a few feet to the right every time they passed, Zorba and I zipped into Rifle, Colorado for the night. The views all along the way were magnificent, and the Rockies were behind us. Well, I got over the Rockies yesterday. It felt good. Zorba's been running great. He definitely needs to rest about every 50 miles. I'll be trying to get out of Colorado tonight, assuming they do the work on Zorba. And then I'm into Utah, and then I got Nevada, and then I finally get to California. So I've gone almost 4,000 miles now in the bus. And I've gotten over a major mountain range. I still got to cross the desert, still got to cross another mountain range, but I'm definitely feeling hopeful that I'm going to make it to California. I have to say that probably the most beautiful part of the country I went through was Utah. I was down in southern Utah near Arches National Park. I was on a narrow two-lane road that traveled alongside the Colorado River that took me down into Moab, where Arches is located. And it was just one amazing scene after another. Just the red rock rising up against the blue sky, the views of the river. It was just a magnificent journey down into Moab, and that's where I stayed for a couple of days and did a lot of hiking and biking, and just beautiful countryside. One amazing vista after another. I had a little bit of an oil leak, and so I had to check the oil at least twice a day, and always carried a couple of quarts with me. When I got to Grand Junction, Colorado, he said it became quite serious at that point, and he said I really needed to just keep a close eye on it. But yeah, I was leaking quite a bit of oil. I like to start my day with coffee, and I brought a small electric coffee maker, but my auxiliary battery really wasn't strong enough to operate that. So I developed my hillbilly coffee method, where I would boil up water on my camp stove, just pour it onto the ground and let it drip into the carafe. And that gave me my morning coffee. I also like eggs in the morning. I would cook up some eggs, and I bought a lot of brats in Missouri, throw some brats in there, and I usually had a pretty hearty breakfast to start the day. Lunches, I tended to stop at either a taco truck or a diner along the way. And then for supper, Cobb salad, boil up some pasta, and I might even grill some chicken somewhere. I'm spending the next 2 days at Spencer Hot Springs for a little mental and physical restoration. The hot springs are located south of Route 50 in northern Nevada, nestled between two mountain ranges. They are undeveloped and open to anyone willing to find them down a 6-mile dirt road. The views as you sit and soak are as relaxing as the water itself. I must admit, after 35 days of living and traveling in Zorba, I'm feeling a bit road weary. I knew this trip would be a challenge when I began, and that was actually one of the motivating factors for me. Having been retired for 1 year, I wanted a new challenge, and I certainly attained that goal. Because of the lack of any AC, driving is a combination of heat, wind, and road noise that takes its toll over time. Add to that the low-level stress of not knowing whether Zorba will make it over the next mountain pass and where I will spend the next night. I am one tired individual. I have one more mountain range to cross, the Sierra Nevadas, before I reach California. Hopefully my time at the hot springs will have me ready to hit the road again. One of the challenges of this trip is that I'm doing it solo. The advantage of that is that this is a very small bus, and 2 people in here would be difficult. But being solo, you're really spending a lot of time on your own, on the road, with your own thoughts. And that is one of the things I wanted. It's a good thing. One of the nice things about the bus is so many people come up and want to talk to you. It seems everybody has a connection in their past to a VW bus, whether an uncle had one, their parents had one, they themselves at some point traveled in one. It's amazing how many people want to come up to you and talk to you about the bus and want to hear about the journey that I'm on.
I'm a better traveler than I am talking every day. Where are you from?
So they had built this, in effect, a hot tub around the hot springs, and you had a pipe that was directing the water into the tub. And it's amazing how hot the water is coming up from underground, the natural spring. If you left that pipe feeding into that hot tub, you would be like a lobster. You would get scalded and cooked in that hot tub. So you really had to regulate it by moving the pipe in and then away from the tub, so it wasn't feeding directly into it, or that water would just get too hot for you to sit in it. One of the more ingenious gadgets that I had, which my wonderful wife Diane gave me, was a shower attachment that I could use in the middle of nowhere. It came with a collapsible bucket that you would open up, fill with water, and there was a pump that operated by batteries that you could insert into the water, then a shower head that could be attached to the back of the bus, and voila, I had myself a shower.
Nice. What you call the world's biggest sand trap, all right? This is the Great Basin Desert. And I'm gonna hit the bejesus out of this. Oh yeah, baby! That was awesome.
After all the challenges encountered in getting here, I'm now driving with a deep sense of satisfaction. 45 years ago, my dream of doing this ended suddenly in the middle of Alabama. That old VW Beetle died, but the dream did not die with it. It sat there unattended while I lived my life. Art and I took several road trips together, but none in an air-cooled VW, and none to California. And here I am, driving through the vineyards of California in an air-cooled VW named Zorba. Turns out, it was just a dream deferred.
Congratulations and welcome back.
Thank you, Art. It was quite the adventure.
45 years later.
45 years later, and I finally made it to California. Did not leave Zorba 2 in a ditch
Zorba 2.
like we did Zorba 1, but it kept trying to get there. I tell you, it was like our first trip in that, you know, getting an air-cooled VW vehicle across the country is no easy task. I met quite a few mechanics along the way.
I'm anxious to hear about these guys because I was wondering if you met anybody like Slick, who was very kind to us years
Slick
ago.
was very kind to us, and I met several mechanics along the way who did me some huge favors. In fact, you know, when I was passing through Kentucky and I was in Louisville and I stopped, Zorba 2 needed an oil change, and there was a hitch in the door that needed to be corrected, and he checked a couple of things out for me, and then in the end I said, all right, well, what do I owe you? And he was like, you don't owe me anything. You're living the dream. You go do your thing. So there was him. There was a mechanic in Bethlehem, PA. There was another mechanic in Missouri who fixed my tire, charged me $10. Another one in Grand Junction, Colorado. Just all great people who just really enjoyed working on Zorba 2.
Now, you don't think any of this was done out of pity, thinking like, this man is not going to make it.
I think all of this was done out of pity. You know, in the end, I only averaged about 150 miles a day. So I would find I would do about 50 miles and I'd need to stop and sort of give myself a break and stretch my legs. And so I wasn't covering a whole lot of ground every day, but day by day, I got closer to California and I got there.
Zorba, your original bug, ended up in a field up on blocks, the way I understand that Slick told the story when he sold the thing off to somebody and never to be found again. And I'm assuming that Zorba 2 is still runnable after that trip?
But it is sitting in a field out in California. So,
But it is in storage, is that correct?
yes. So
All right.
once I got to California, it was took me 5 weeks to get to California. And I have to say the bus got a little smaller every day. And I was pretty exhausted by the time I got to California. So the original plan was to turn around and drive it back, but I decided to put that off for the future. And Zorba is sitting in a field in a storage area out in Santa Rosa, California. There was some work I needed done on the bus, and so I had this incredible mechanic, Elliot, who was helping me out. I was in fact staying at Elliot's house. How many mechanics let you stay at their house while they work on your vehicle? He stopped that oil leak. He replaced the ball joints. Zorba's ready to roll. He's sitting there in a field, wrapped up, and I just need to get out there and bring Zorba home.